Hello there, this is George Lapas from Golden Games Soccer. Today we are looking at the legendary Dutch coach Rinus Michels. He is a personality who showed relentless commitment to excellence and made a lasting impact not only in football but also teaching, psychology, planning and organisation. Michels is regarded as the father of modern football as we know it. His total football vision remains the paradigm that other managers developed further. Some coaches influence teams, Michels influenced football as a whole. Rinus Michels was born in Amsterdam on the 9th of February 1928. He passed away in Ulst, Belgium on the 3rd of March 2005, aged 77, following heart surgery. He had a long history of heart problems and had previously suffered a major heart attack during Holland's World Cup semi-final against Brazil. Michels grew up on a street near the Olympic Stadium in Amsterdam, the venue for the Olympic Games that year. He celebrated his 9th birthday on the 9th of February 1936 and received a pair of football boots and an Ajax shirt. He was passionate about football from a young age and developed his skills playing on the streets. In 1940, Michels became a member of the Ajax training academy aged 12. However, his football development was put on hold due to World War II. On the 9th of June 1946, Michels was invited into Ajax's first team squad. He was a striker and measured 6'1", or 1m86. He made his debut for Ajax against Den Haag, scoring 5 goals in an 8-3 victory. As a player, he was characterised for his hard work rather than for his technical qualities. Between 1946 and 1958, he appeared in 264 league matches for Ajax, in which he scored 122 goals. Michels' career with the Netherlands national squad lasted just 5 matches, making his debut on the 8th of June in 1950. He lost all of his matches in which he participated. In 1958, 1 year after winning his second league title with Ajax, he was forced to end his career due to a back injury. After his playing career, he became a gymnastics teacher at a school for deaf children and also coached an amateur side in Amsterdam. He studied at the Amsterdam Sports Academy, and it was here that he developed his thorough approach, a focus on discipline and a desire to win. Former teammate Bobby Harms, later his assistant, noticed, "Michels was completely different from when he was a player. The main thing with him now was discipline, fantastic discipline. Even with his assistant coaches, he was like an animal trainer, but he was also like a chess master in football tactics." In the 1950s, Holland was still recovering from World War II. However, the Dutch were embracing the free-thinking culture of the 1960s and the perception of the country was changing. It was actually in Amsterdam's Hilton Hotel that John Lennon and Yoko Ono held the bed-in 1969 to promote world peace. Ajax Football Club was named after the mythological hero Ajax, or Ajax, a Greek who fought in the Trojan War against Troy. In the Iliad, Ajax was said to be the greatest of all the Greeks, next to his cousin Achilles, and fought with Troy's champion, Hector. At the time of taking over, Dutch football was not considered to be anywhere near the level we understand today. They lacked flair and were probably comparable to teams like Hungary or Slovakia currently, without being unfair to these nations. This was the environment in which Michels was taking over, with the priority for the first season being to save Ajax from relegation. He managed this working hard to improve the team spirit and get enough results to avoid the drop. In his first full season as manager, Michels brought glory to Ajax. He introduced new training methods that were imaginative and more focused than ever. Fundamentally, Michels was totally focused on developing the winning mindset of the players and improving them physically. Shark Zwart, a former Ajax and Netherlands winger, said, "We did everything with the ball. At the beginning of the season, we had 1 week of very hard training, 5 training sessions a day. It was like a military camp." It was at this time that Michels was nicknamed the General. Michels also made organisational changes that significantly improved the players' perceptions of themselves and therefore their performances. He persuaded the Ajax board to make the players professional, training during the day and resting in the evenings. Previously, even players like Cruyff had part-time jobs. Remaining semi-pro meant that Ajax couldn't compete at the highest level. Michels noted the motivational impact of the new setup. The players knew they had to do their best, otherwise they would be dropped and have to go back to their previous jobs. He was developing a system for success. He was trying to create a team that followed instructions and functioned better as a whole, and reducing the negative impact any individual could have. The positions on the pitch, right wing, central midfield, etc., were referred to by numbers. Right wing was 7, left wing 11. The significance of the numbers was due to Michels' notion that it improved individual interpretation of the position and improved quick organisation and clearer learning. Some interpreted this as Michels reducing players to numbers and not people. Within the playing system, each number denoted particular roles and responsibilities. This idea was extended to the youth teams and meant that a player from the youth team could step into the first team and know precisely how to fit in and how to function within the squad. Michels demanded constant improvement. The players themselves began to openly discuss each other's strengths and weaknesses and push each other to improve. Ruud Krol, defender for Ajax Netherlands, said, "Michels taught us always that simple football is best. It is always very difficult to play simple football. We could play every kind of football. We could play tough, we could play technical. We were not afraid. We trained on it. 1 against 1, 3 against 3, always very strong games." Another notable management improvement made by Michels involved discussing the medical and psychological state of players with his coaching staff in every detail, every day. The conversations that take place between medical staff and players can provide a window into the player's state of mind. Details about the players' personalities are revealed. Michels was psychologically tough and very strict. He made a distinction between his on and off-field behaviour. Away from football, Michels socialised with his team and treated them as equals, even being a practical joker. On the training pitch or on match day, he was the boss. The impact of this approach on the players would have been interesting. They would have recognised the time to relax and the time for work. Michels constantly tried to manage the mood of the squad. Overall, he wanted the team to play and train at a high tempo, and so kept the group in a state of high alert and aggression to maintain the right tension. He carefully provoked arguments and criticised the players, generally picking on key players to get a reaction. He would ask his assistant manager Bobby Harms to make controversial refereeing decisions in training matches to test the players' reactions, whilst also training them to deal with poor refereeing decisions that might take place on an actual match day. Ajax were coached to be very aggressive right from the start of the game. The aggressive mental attitude was driven by a desire to win. Physical and mentally aggressive. Ajax was certainly not built on the premise of beautiful football alone. Physical and mental aggression were the base on which Michels' winning football was built. The team-building recipe Michels was creating yielded results. Michels led Ajax to the Dutch Championship in 1966, 67, 68 and 1970, and also the Dutch Cup in 1967, 1970 and 71. In Europe, Ajax's breakthrough came on the 7th of December 1966 when they played against Bill Shankly's Liverpool in the second round of the European Cup. Liverpool underestimated Ajax. Ajax scored after 3 minutes, and this was the beginning of a rout, scoring 4 goals in the first half. The game finished 5-1 in Amsterdam. Shankly predicted a 7-0 win in the second leg. However, in the intimidating atmosphere at Anfield, Ajax remained calm and Cruyff scored twice to draw 2-2. This game was significant. It was a stepping stone result and proved they were capable of beating a world-class team, considered better than themselves. This performance would have given Michels confidence in the process he was constructing and paved the way for Ajax and total football being acknowledged and recognised internationally. Ajax's next match was a quarter-final against the much weaker Dukla Prague. They drew the first leg 1-1 in Amsterdam before losing the second leg 2-1. The better team had lost and Michels was angry. Again, this was a significant result as it showed the mental positioning of the team at that point. Although Ajax had been the dominant team in the tie, the performance demonstrated naivety, complacency and a lack of winning mentality. The team was able to beat Liverpool when playing as underdogs, but lose to a team when they were the dominant side. They were not yet consistent. Over the next 4 years, Michels created a team of hungry winners. He turned Ajax from a team of talented semi-professionals into the dominant team in Europe. In 1969, they reached the final of the European Cup for the first time, but were convincingly defeated 4-1 by an experienced AC Milan team. Again, he learnt. This match convinced Michels to replace the older players with tougher, younger players more suited to the new style Ajax were playing. In 1971, he managed Ajax to the first of 3 consecutive European Cups, a feat only achieved previously by Real Madrid. The concept of total football is something that is credited to Rinus Michels. Contrary to common belief, Michels did not invent total football. The principles of total football evolved over a period of time. The Austrians and Hungarian mighty Magyars in the 1950s had pioneered some of the components long before Rinus Michels. Also, Ajax had a tradition of intelligent and attacking football credited to Englishmen Jack Reynolds and Vic Buckingham, who had already started to experiment with 2 key components of total football: fluidity and versatility to overload the opposition defences in attack. Both these concepts Michels would retain. Fundamentally, total football is an offensively minded tactic with the whole team thinking to attack. Although Michels didn't totally invent the idea of total football, his genius was in realising that in order to take advantage of this free-flowing style, the individual players and the team's fitness was paramount. Michels was the architect who developed the correct mix of intelligent and technical players. Equal credit, however, must also be given to the genius of Cruyff, who contributed to the on-field organisation. Former Ajax player Barry Hulshoff said, "We discussed space the whole time. Johan Cruyff always talked about where people should run and where they should stand and where they should not move. Cruyff himself has discussed how Michels could arrange the outside of the field, whereas he would arrange the inside of the field. Cruyff was the epitome of the manager on the pitch." Michels himself explains the development of total football as a collaborative effort. Michels also understood that fluidity and versatility were also necessary when defending. All players had to be able to defend in the middle and wide areas, with more advanced players also being required to drop and defend. The appreciation of space was the central concept around which everything revolved. Total football was about educating the players that the spaces on the pitch could be affected by their individual and team movements. Space was flexible. To create space when attacking, it was necessary to make the pitch as wide and as long as possible, to be unpredictable and disrupt the opposition's organisation, to create spaces in an engineered way. When defending, the opposite was required. To reduce space required the team to be compact and narrow, defending with an aggressive mentality and forcing the opposition to play in smaller spaces with less time in order to force errors to win possession. The concepts of attacking shape, defending shape, movement off the ball, etc., all of which relate to spatial awareness, are now commonly appreciated, but the origin was with Michels' vision. Another tactical development by Michels was pressing and developing a defensive offside trap. Johan Neeskens naturally and aggressively pressed and chased the opposition to make tackles and force errors. At first, the other players stayed back. Slowly, teammates began to take his lead. During the 1970 season, the rest of the defence also began to squeeze up, and without training, the team started to play offside. A high pressing style with a high defensive line and offside trap had naturally developed. The ability of players to switch between attack and defence, changing positions as required, was innovative and developed as a natural progression to find success against teams who defended very deep and with numbers or used man marking strategies. Michels encouraged his defenders and midfielders to join attacks. With time and practice, position switching began to look fluid. Ajax created problems for the opposition with their off-the-ball movement and attacking intent. He didn't want his teams to have slow build-ups. Instead, the team had to be very direct and go for goal. Also, Michels' player rotation was not erratic. It occurred following strict rules in wide areas and through the centre, offensively and defensively. With each switch, the players revised their position. So, even if the personnel changed, the positions remained constant. The defender primarily thought defensively, but also had to think offensively. For an attacker, it was the other way around. The organisation of Michels' total football dealt with the moments when and where those responsibilities met. Position switching meant that the players were often playing outside of their comfort zones, with more defensively oriented players attacking and attackers defending. In Michels' strategy, it was important that they resume their usual positions as quickly as possible. The legendary Italian AC Milan manager Arrigo Sacchi said, "There has only been one real tactical revolution, and it happened when football shifted from an individual to a collective game. It happened with Ajax first, and then the Holland national team at the beginning of the 1970s. You can see that it's clear that Michels' total football changed the game. All tactical innovations since then, pressing, offside traps, tiki-taka, player versatility, fluidity between players and formations, etc., have developed as a result. After the fantastic success at Ajax, it became time to move on. Rinus Michels arrived at Barcelona for the second half of the 1971 season. He imposed a strict disciplinary code within the Barcelona squad, a team that had failed to win the Spanish League title for over a decade. In his first season, his only success was winning the Fairs Cup against Leeds United in a one-off final at the Camp Nou. In the league, an unexpected defeat against Cordoba in the penultimate game of the season meant they lost the title. The following season also ended trophyless. The supporters had to wait until the arrival of Johan Cruyff in the summer of 1973 to see the Spanish title come back to Barcelona after a drought of 14 seasons. With Cruyff, Michels' plan could be carried out to perfection. However, the 1974-75 season saw a return to poor results and was again trophyless. It was at this point that Michels decided to put an end to his first period at Barcelona and was appointed national coach with the Netherlands, who had just qualified for the 1974 World Cup. Prior to 1974, Holland had never made any telling impact in international competition. They had only qualified for the 1934 and 38 World Cups in Italy and France. In the decade preceding the 1974 World Cup, and mainly through Michels, Holland had produced an outstanding generation of players and had started to dominate football in Europe. The national team had developed on the international scene too, looking capable of winning the upcoming 74 World Cup in West Germany. Michels planned to replicate the system with most of the players he had developed at Ajax. Piet Keizer, former Ajax and Netherlands winger, said, "When Michels took over, he changed the playing staff considerably and he changed the training even more. His was the hardest physical preparation I ever had. We sometimes had 4 sessions a day. He also introduced the Italian system of taking the players away for a period of concentrated training before a big match. We would start work in the morning and carry on until the evening. He was by no means a miserable man, but he was very strict with the players and there were lots of arguments about discipline. The message was pretty clear. Those who did not like it would have to leave. Michels intended to make attacking the best form of defence. He brought in a goalkeeper who had excellent outfield qualities and could function as a sweeper, rather than just stay on his line. He also selected a central defensive partnership, partly out of necessity, but who were both capable on the ball and skilled at stepping up to press. The aim was for every player to be comfortable on the ball, from back to front. Although these decisions appear intelligent and perfectly understandable now, they were very controversial at the time. His first game as Netherlands coach was on 27th of March 1974 in a 1-1 draw against Austria. 2 weeks before the tournament began, the Dutch squad lost another friendly 2-0 to a second division German team. A week before the tournament began, however, things started to improve when they played Argentina in a friendly in Amsterdam that the Dutch won 4-1. Following that, morale started to improve. Their first game of the 1974 World Cup was against Uruguay. Holland lined up with their famous bright orange shirts. For the majority of the game, the Uruguayans struggled to attack and Holland won 2-0, but in reality they should have won by a larger margin. Holland's next game was against Sweden. They were less dominant. They showed flashes of brilliance, but the match laboured to a 0-0 draw. The Sweden game itself is more remembered for one moment of brilliance by the world's best player. Cruyff disguised the turn by shaping up to cross the ball, using the inside of his right foot to cut the ball behind his standing foot. The Cruyff turn would go on to be a skill that everyone has heard of and a fundamental technique that all youngsters are taught or learn themselves. Against Bulgaria in the next game, Holland were fluent and dominated, winning 4-1 and moving on to face Argentina. In this game they kept possession but were also ruthless, finishing the game as 4-0 winners. The Dutch beat East Germany in their following match to face Brazil in the semi-finals. This Brazil side was not of the same quality as it had been in the 1970 World Cup. Pelé was watching in the crowd, but Jairzinho and Rivellino still remained. Holland outplayed and outfought Brazil in a dirty and almost violent match, winning 2-0. They reached the final after 5 wins and 1 draw, scoring 14 goals and conceding only 1 in 6 matches. They would face West Germany in the final. It would be the match that would come to define Dutch football. Holland went ahead early in the game, winning and scoring a penalty without West Germany even touching the ball. What followed was 20 to 30 minutes of arrogant football, played in a way as if to humiliate the opposition and make a point. It all came back to the Second World War. Some of the players had had family affected by the war. This anti-German feeling, however, remained in Dutch culture and formed part of the players' psyche. Holland passed the ball around, retaining possession and playing some nice football, but largely going nowhere, and most importantly failing to score. Tactically, Cruyff had also positioned himself deeper than usual, and he became less and less a factor as the game went on. And confidence grew in the West German side led by libero Beckenbauer. Germany equalised, also through a penalty, and in the 43rd minute Germany scored their second goal through Gerd Müller. In the second half, the Dutch played well and had chances but simply couldn't finish them. 90 minutes of thrilling football ended, and Holland had lost. Although the country outwardly celebrated for getting so far in the tournament, inwardly they were devastated. The most talented group of players the country had ever produced had failed to win against their biggest rival. They had been unprofessional in the final and allowed their feelings to affect their performance and decision-making. Their loss in 1974 has ensured that they will never be forgotten, however. It was hard for the Dutch to overcome, but they had made a major statement. Wim Rijsbergen, the former Netherlands defender, remembered, "Michels changed football. We were the clockwork orange. He changed the mentality. We were not just guys moving forwards and backwards. We put a lot of pressure on their other team and took a lot of risks at the back. The defenders went forward, the forwards came back. We played football. We even used the goalkeeper as a libero, playing outside the area." After the World Cup, Michels briefly returned to Ajax for the 75-76 season, before he returned to Barcelona for the 76-77 season. His stay at Nou Camp ended in 1977-78 season when he won his third trophy with the club, the Copa del Rey. In '79, he joined the LA Aztecs, a team that competed in the North American Soccer League. He then moved to FC Cologne from 1980 to 1983 and returned home for two more spells in charge of the Dutch national side between 1984 and 1988. It was to be the second of those periods which sealed Michels' place in history. At the age of 60, he came out of retirement to lead the national team for the 1988 European Championships. That was again ironically being hosted by Germany. The Dutch were ambitious and driven by the thought they could win the tournament in the home of their biggest rivals. After losing the first group match against the Soviet Union, the Netherlands went on to qualify for the semi-final by defeating England 3-1 with a hat-trick by the tournament's top scorer Marco van Basten, and then also beating the Republic of Ireland 1-0. For many Dutch football supporters, the most important game in the tournament was the semi-final against West Germany. The Dutch considered the game a revenge for the 1974 World Cup final. The match was close, with the West Germans taking the lead on 55 minutes with a Lothar Matthäus penalty, after Jürgen Klinsmann had been fouled. The Germans held the lead for just 20 minutes. Jürgen Kohler brought down Van Basten and Ronald Koeman converted the penalty to make it 1-1. With the match heading for extra time, a through ball caught the Germans out and Van Basten finished in the 88th minute for a 2-1 win. It was a memorable game, but the match is also remembered for some more arrogant behaviour from the Dutch, including Ronald Koeman, who, in front of the German supporters, pretended to wipe his backside with a German shirt that had been given to him after the match, as if it was toilet paper. The Netherlands won the final with a convincing victory over the Soviet Union through a header by Ruud Gullit and a truly remarkable volley by Marco van Basten. Michels said after the match, "We won the tournament, but we all know that the semi-final was the real final." This was the national team's first major tournament win, and it restored them to the forefront of international football after almost 10 years in the wilderness. The General ended his coaching career in 1989 at German side Bayer Leverkusen. He retired from international management after the 1992 European Championships in Denmark, where his team lost on penalties in the semi-finals against the hosts and eventual winners. His legacy is far-reaching. It's not just the Netherlands who still adhere to his philosophies, nor Barcelona's world-renowned La Masia Academy that has been founded upon his beliefs. Almost every youth setup in the world borrows from his extensive coaching strategies. Michels is the father of modern football. His vision, dedication and passion created a new pathway for football. Michels was voted FIFA Coach of the Century in 1999. 20 years later, in 2019, France Football, which gives out the Ballon d'Or, reiterated this in ranking 50 all-time greatest managers. Michels came top of the list with Ferguson, Sacchi, Cruyff and Guardiola, making the rest up of the top 5. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, share and subscribe. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks again.